Shri Krishna Parabrahmane Namaha. Today we are going to discuss about Charvaka philosophy. Charvaka, they have separate ashramas, they have separate organization. Regarding this, we can get a lot of information through this topic called Charvaka philosophy. Prayer. Hiranyagarbham amrutam bhugarbham paratah param prabho prabhumanadyantam prapadyetam raviprabham. Charvaka, also known as Lokayata, is an ancient school of Indian materialism or hedonism. It is a heterodox school of the Indian philosophy. Charvaka holds direct perception, empiricism, and conditional inference as proper sources of knowledge, embraces philosophical skepticism, and rejects ritualism and supernaturalism. It was a popular belief system in ancient India. The principle is one. Runam kritva ghritam pibet. That means drink the ghee even doing debt. It rejects supernatural concepts like God and soul, which Charvaka philosophy. Charvaka philosophy also rejects metaphysical concepts like afterlife or reincarnation and moksha. Although Charvaka doctrine had disappeared by the end of the medieval period due to unknown reasons, its one-time importance is confirmed by the lengthy attempts to refute it found in both Buddhist and Hindu philosophical texts, which also constitute the main sources for knowledge of this philosophy. Brihaspati is traditionally referred to as the founder of Charvaka or Lokayata philosophy, although some scholars dispute this. It emerged during the Shramana movement as an anti-Vedic philosophy. It rejects the authority of Vedas or any sacred scriptures and opposed the Vaidika Dharma, Brahmanism. During the Hindu Reformation period, in the first millennium BC, when Jainism was revived and reorganized by 23rd Arihant Parshvanatha, one of the best Tirthankar, and Buddhism was established by Gautama Buddha, the Charvaka philosophy was fairly documented and opposed by Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Unlike other major non-theistic, Gnostic religions like Jainism and Buddhism, Charvaka was not a dharmic philosophy. Much of the primary literature of Charvaka, the Barhaspatya Sutras, were lost either due to waning popularity or other unknown reasons. Charvaka's teachings have been compiled from historic secondary literature such as those found in Shastras, Sutras, and the Indian epic poetry, as well as in the dialogues of Gautama Buddha and from Jain literature. However, there is a text that may belong to the Charvaka tradition written by the skeptic philosopher Jayarasi Bhatta, known as the Tattvoplava Simha, that provides information about this Charvaka school, albeit unorthodox. One of the widely studied principles of Charvaka philosophy was its rejection of inference as a means to establish valid universal knowledge and metaphysical truths. In other words, the Charvaka epistemology states that whenever one infers a truth from a set of observations or truths, one must acknowledge doubt. Inferred knowledge is conditional. Charvaki is categorized as one of the Nastika or heterodox schools of Indian philosophy. Especially for Nastika philosophy, Charvaka doctrines are suitable. They strictly follow such a heterodox principles. It is considered an example of atheistic schools in the Indian tradition, especially. Nowhere we can see this other than India. Some people consider it is a part of Hindu philosophy or Hinduism, as the word Hindu is an exonymy, while many others consider it as a distinct school of philosophy. The etymology of Charvaka is uncertain. Bhattacharya quotes the grammarian and Jain Acharya Hemachandra to the effect that the word Charvaka is derived from the root charv, mean to chew. Charvatyatmanam iti charvakaha. Charvati charvanam, ruminating, no? That is called chewing. If you take a chewing gum, how chewing? That is called charvaka. As Lokayata, according to claims of Devi Prasad Chattopadhyaya, the traditional name of Charvaka is Lokayata. It was called Lokayata because it was prevalent and ayata among people. Lokeshu ayata mean prevalent among people and meant the world outlook of the people. The dictionary meaning of Lokayata signifies directed towards, aiming at the world or worldly. In early to mid 20th century literature, the etymology of Lokayata has been given different interpretations, in part because the primary sources are unavailable and the meaning has been deduced from divergent secondary literature. The name Lokayata, for example, is found in Chanakya's Arthashastra, which refers to three anvikshakis, literally examining by reason, logical philosophies, yoga, Sankhya and Lokayata. However, Lokayata in the Arthashastra is not anti-Vedic, but implies Lokayata to be a part of Vedic lore. In 8th century Jaina literature, Shadarshana Samuchaya means Shadarshana Samuchaya by Acharya Haribhadra Maharaj mentioned that Lokayata is stated to be the Hindu school where there is no God, no samsara, no karma, no duty, no fruits of merit, no sin. See how many flexible qualities for lazy fellows. The Buddhist Sanskrit work Divya Vadana mentions Lokayata where it is listed among subjects to study and with the sense of technical logical science. Shanta Rakshita and Adi Shankara use the word Lokayata to mean materialism, with the latter using the term Lokayata, no Charvaka. Charvaka is disappeared in the place and placed Lokayata. In Silanka's commentary on Sutra Kritangana, the oldest Jain Agama Prakriti literature, he has used four terms for Charvaka. What are they? Number one, Brihaspatya. Number two, Lokayata. Number three, Bhutavadin. Number four, Vama Margin. Let us see its origin. The tenets of the Charvaka atheistic doctrines can be traced to the relatively later composed layers of the Rig Veda, while substantial discussions on the Charvaka is found in post-Vedic literature. The primary literature of Charvaka, such as the Brihaspati Sutra, is missing or lost. Its theories and development has been compiled from historic secondary literature, such as those found in the Shastras, Sutras, and the epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana of Hinduism, as well as from the dialogues of Gautama Buddha and Jain literature. In all the Upanishads, especially in the Upanishad, in chapter 2 of Brihadaranyaka, the leading theorist Yajnavalkya states in a passage often referred to by the irreligious, so I say, after death there is no awareness. This declaration arises in a discussion with his female philosophy interlocutor Maitreyi, who notices that this might mean there is no afterlife, no religion. After Yajnavalkya said this, Maitreyi exclaimed, "Now, sir, you have totally confused me by saying, after death there is no awareness." Substantial discussions about Charvaka doctrines are found in texts during the 6th century BC because of the emergence of competing philosophies such as Buddhism and Jainism. Author Bhattacharya posts the Charvaka may have been one of several atheistic materialist schools that existed in ancient India during the 6th century BC. Though there is evidence of its development in Vedic era, the Charvaka school of philosophy predated the Astika schools, as well as being a philosophical predecessor to subsequent or contemporaneous philosophies such as Ajnana, Ajivika, Jainism and Buddhism in the classical period of our Indian philosophy. There is no doubt in this regard. The earliest Charvaka school in India, whose texts still survive, is Ajita Kesha Kambali. Listen it. What? Ajita Kesha Kambali. Although materialist schools existed before Charvaka, it was the only school which systematized materialist philosophy by setting them down in the form of aphorisms in the 6th century BC. There was a base text, a collection sutras or aphorisms, and several commentaries were written to explicate the aphorisms. This should be seen in the wider context of the oral tradition of Indian philosophy. It was in the 6th century BC onwards, with the emergent popularity of Buddhism, that ancient schools started codifying and writing down the details of their philosophy. E.W. Hopkins, in his The Ethics of India, claims that Charvaka philosophy predated Jainism and Buddhism, mentioning the old Charvaka or materialist of the 6th century BC. It proves that it had already existed for centuries and had become a generic term by 600 BC. Its methodology of skepticism is included in the Ramayana Ayodhya Kanda, chapter 108, where Jabali tries to persuade Rama to accept the kingdom by using Gnostic arguments. We can find surely in Ramayana about these Charvaka doctrines through the character of Jabali. Though Jabali was the ascetic, means tapasvi, but he talks like a Nastika. However, he spoke, he advised, but Rama refused. What he said to Rama, let us go through that. O highly wise, arrive at a conclusion, therefore, that there is nothing beyond this universe. Give precedence to that which meets the eye and turn your back on what is beyond our knowledge. There are alternative theories behind the origins of Charvaka. Brihaspati is sometimes referred to as a founder of Charvaka or Lokayata philosophy, although other scholars dispute this. Billingston states that a philosopher named Charvaka lived in or about the 6th century BC, who developed the premise of this Indian philosophy in the form of Brihaspati Sutra. That's maybe correct, because Brihaspati is the teacher of the gods, may not come to this type of Charvaka doctrine. These sutras predates 150 BC because they are mentioned in the Mahabhashya. Arthur Basham, citing the Buddhist Samanna Phala Sutta, suggests 6 schools of heterodox, pre-Buddhist and pre-Jainic atheistic Indian tradition in 6th century in India's historical timeline, after which this system seems to have disappeared without leaving any trace. Now let us see the Charvaka's philosophy. Charvaka's school of philosophy had a variety of atheistic and materialistic beliefs. They held perception and direct experiments to be valid and reliable source of knowledge. The essential tenets of the philosophy were: number 1, direct perception is the only means of establishing and accepting any kind of truth. Number 2, what cannot be perceived and understood by the senses does not exist. 3, all that exists are the observable elements of air, earth, fire, and water. The ultimate good in life is pleasure. The only evil is pain. Pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain is the sole purpose of human existence. Religion is an invention, according to Charvaka philosophy, of the strong, clever who prey on the weak. The Charvaka did not believe in karma, rebirth, or an afterlife. To them, all attributes that represented a person, such as the thinness, fatness, etc., resided in the body. The Sarva Siddhanta Sangraha states that Charvaka position as follows. There is no other world other than this. There is no heaven and no hell. The realm of Shiva, unlike religions, are fabricated by stupid impostors from Sarva Siddhanta Sangraha. Now, Charvaka believed that there was nothing wrong with sensual pleasure, since it is impossible to have pleasure without pain. Charvaka thought that wisdom lay in enjoying pleasure and avoiding pain as far as possible. Unlike many of the Indian philosophies of the time, Charvaka did not believe in austerities or rejecting pleasure out of fear of pain and held such reasoning to be foolish. The Sarva Siddhanta Sangraha states the Charvaka position on the pleasure and hedonism as follows. What they feel? The enjoyment of heaven lies in eating delicious food, keeping company of young women, using fine cloths, perfumes, garlands, sandal paste applying to the body, while moksha is death, which is essential, the cessation of life, breathe. The wise, therefore, ought not to take pains on account of moksha. A fool wears himself out by penances and fastings. Chastity and other such ordinances are laid down by clever weaklings. The scholar Bhattacharya argues that common belief that all materialists are nothing but sensationalists is a misconception, and no authentic Charvaka aphorism have been cited by the movement's opponents to support this type of view. Let us see the religion. Charvaka rejected many of the standard religious concepts of Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and Ajivakas, one of the system, such as an afterlife, reincarnation, samsara, karma, and religious rites. They were critical of the Vedas as well as Buddhist scriptures. The Sarva Siddhanta Sangraha with commentaries by Madhavachari describes the Charvakas as critical of Vedas, materialist without morals and ethics. To Charvakas, the text states the Vedas suffered from several faults, errors in transmission across generations, untruth, self-contradiction, and tautology. The Charvakas pointed out the disagreements, debates, and mutual rejection by Karma Kanda, Vedic priests, and Jnana Kanda, Vedic priest, as a proof that either one of the is wrong or both are wrong, as both cannot be right. Charvakas, according to Sarvashara Siddhanta Sangraha, verses 10 and 11, declared the Vedas to be incoherent rhapsodies whose only usefulness was to provide livelihood to priests. They also held the belief that Vedas were invented by man and had no divine authority. Charvakas rejected the need for ethics or morals and suggested that while life remains, let a man live happily. Let him feed on ghee even though he runs in debt. Runam Gritva Gritam Vibet. The Jain scholar Haribhadra, in the last section of his text, Saddarshana Samuchaya, includes Charvaka in his list of the 6 darshanas of Indian tradition, along with Buddhism, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Jainism, and Jaiminiya. Haribhadra notes that Charvakas assert that there is nothing beyond the senses. Consciousness is an emergent property, and that it is foolish to seek what cannot be seen. The accuracy of these views attributed to Charvakas has been contested by scholars. Let us mention about them in Mahabharata. In the epic Mahabharata, a demon dresses up like a Brahmin and appoints himself as spoken person for all Brahmins in named Charvaka. Charvaka criticizes Yudhishthira for killing his teacher, kinsmen, and superiors, and claims that all the Brahmins are uttering maledictions. To him, Yudhishthira is also ashamed of this. But the Brahmin Vaishampayana reassures him. The Brahmins, now filled with rage, destroy Charvaka with the power of their mantras. Let us mention in other words. No independent works on Charvaka philosophy can be found except for a few sutras attributed to Brihaspati. The 8th century Tattvopaplava Simha of Jayarasi Bhatta with Madhyamika influence is a significant source of Charvaka philosophy. Shaddarshana Samuchaya and Sarvadarshana Sangraha of Vidyaranya are a few other works which elucidate Charvaka thought. One of the widely studied references to the Charvaka philosophy is the Sarvadarshana Sangraha of Etymological All Philosophies Collection, a famous work of the 14th century Advaita Vedanta philosopher Madhva Vidyaranya from South India, which starts with a chapter on the Charvaka system. After invoking in the prologue of the book the Hindu gods Shiva and Vishnu, by whom the earth and rest were produced, Vidyaranya asks in the first chapter, but how can we attribute to the divine being the giving of supreme felicity, when such a notion has been utterly abolished by Charvakas, the crest gem of the aesthetic or atheistic school, the follower of the doctrine of Brihaspati. The efforts of Charvaka are indeed hard to be eradicated, for the majority of living beings hold by the current refrain. While life is yours, live joyously. None can escape death's searching eye. When once this frame of ours they burn, how shall it ever again return? Sanskrit poems and plays like Naishada, Charita, Prabodha, Chandrodaya, Agama Dambara, Vidwan Moda, Tarangini, and Kadambari contain representations of the Chandrika thought. However, the authors of these works were thoroughly opposed to materialism and tried to portray the Charvaka in an unfavorable light. Therefore, their works should be only accepted and with criticism. Srikanthaya Kalyana Nidhe Nidhedram Sri Venkatramacharya Srinivasaya Mangala Mangala Sarvayavadacharya Brahmai Sarvaesha Purvairacharya Sarvadaya Sumangalam.